Alright, welcome back to the shop. So today we're going to take a look at three different kinds of megers. We're going to start with the Klein, then we're going to go back in time to this Simpson, and go further back in time to the Biddle. So these all work a little differently. This has 6 large D batteries in it, and that's how it gets its power. You can see it's an analog scale. This is all digital. We've gone over this one before. And this one has no batteries. It's actually a hand crank that you crank. And that's how it works. You actually generate the electricity yourself by cranking it. They say that you should crank it around 160 RPM. No more than 3 turns per second. So you can count that off in your head. And we'll check these out. I think we'll have some interesting results. Maybe some looks at the size arc that they each create, possibly. And we'll go up through the voltage here on this one. You can see it's set at 5,000 now. And we'll see how the arc jumps as the voltage increases in the circuit. Alright, let's get to it. The first one here, you'll be familiar with it if you've watched the channel at all, is the Klein Meger, the ET600. And what we're going to do is I got it set to 500 volts here, and there'll be a reason for that we'll see here in a little bit. And we're going to go to a test here, and we're going to see what happens. I'm going to hold in the test button, and hopefully I'll be able to edit properly a video showing what it looks like when we test. Alright, so here we go. Okay, so there we go. There's our test. That's what that looks like. You get a little bit of an arc in between those two conductors that are just apart from each other. Okay, so we took a step further back in time and we went with a Simpson model 405 Meger. Now this one, there's our 500 volt and 1000 volt. We're not going to test 25 or 5000. We're going to go to this scale, the 0 to 500 meg, and we're going to give a test here, and we'll see what that looks like. I had to play around with the conductors again, so it may not read the exact same, but we'll see what we get here. So there we go. If we do it again, about 100 meg there. Okay, so we've gone a bit more back in time to a Biddle meter, and this is a 7675. And the reason for the 500 volt test on the Klein was because this one is rated at 500 volts. So trying to do apples and apples here. So this has a crank, which I'll show pictures of this then. It's just kind of hard to keep everything straight here and whatnot because these wires are kind of finicky. So what we'll do is I will crank this. It says crank up to 160 RPM, not over 3 turns per second. So if you can do so, go ahead and count. So I'll run that again and we'll see what reading we get about. It's really hard to tell with these. You can see the needles bouncing around a lot, but really the biggest thing that we'd rather it be at infinity and we don't want it at 0. And the interesting thing with these is when you're cranking them, it'll actually crank harder when it's shorted, and it cranks a lot easier when it's at infinity or an open circuit. So we could see it was dancing around here in the middle, and we could also see that it was arcing. So we'll just do that one more time. So there we go. You can see that that was indeed testing, much like the Klein was. We're bouncing around in this area. I have used this with something. It could be because we have open conductors. The arc is jumping around a bit. I have tested with this already, and I've gotten the needle to be fairly steady at a resistance reading. So could be a lot of variables going on with the setup here because I don't actually have a partially grounded item. So we'll move on. Okay, so here's the 1000 volt test on the Klein ET600, and hopefully we'll have the video for that too. Okay, so there we go. We can see there's still an arc just between those two conductors that are just hitting each other. Well, not quite touching. So let me regroup here and we'll get the next meter hooked up. So what we'll do is we'll step it up to 1000 volts and see if we get the same thing. We should see a larger arc. And we do not see the same thing. See a little bit more resolution on this scale. We can actually see we are at about 7 or so meg. So we are on the lower scale here. And just for the fun of it, we'll skip to a different scale, and you can see it wants to peg because this scale, its low end, is 40. So we want to go here. And there you go. Okay, because I know you're curious, what we'll do is we'll go to 5000 volt test, and we'll see what the arc looks like there. And if you notice the arc dissipated slowly, this needle went down with it, and that's because the circuit retained some voltage for a little while. You always got to be careful with these Megers. The circuit can retain voltage. Now if you were to test something this high a voltage, you'd want to make sure the insulation is rated on everything for that much voltage. You could do some serious damage to components on things and whatnot. It just so happens this meter is more of an industrial meter, and it can go to that voltage. And you can see that is, you know, you can actually hear it. It's a decent amount of power. If we do other tests now, it'll read open because the voltage is not going to jump through that much air. So we have a large gap, and what will happen if we close the gap, we'll start to get the other voltages. So here's 2500 volt. And if we went to 5000 volt, it's a little bit, you know, but we probably won't get 1000. We got to go closer for 1000. $2,500. and 5,000. At 500, it just makes it. Okay, so I thought we'd take a little closer look at the Biddle here. Here's our test leads. Confidence instilling, I know. But this is only a 500 volt test meter, so this isn't necessarily that dangerous, but I'll probably upgrade these at some point. But either way, what I thought I'd do is I'd show what the scale does when you go from a dead short like this to an open circuit like this. So here we go. We'll do the dead short. Try and keep all this away from everything. You're not going to see this. I'm going to have to put it out of frame so that it's safe. But they're shorted together. And you'll see, as soon as I start cranking, that needle goes right to the 0 position. And it stays there. Now when we bring this back, when we take these apart, it stays there. So now that these are open, what we'll do is we'll put them off frame and safe. And we'll start cranking this tool again. And you can see we stay at infinity the whole time because it's an open circuit, and that's what we want. Basically, when I was using this, I was trying to, qualify stuff anywhere at the top end here. If it was getting down here, starting to get a little bit, more concerning about the quality of what you're working with. So there's a little view on how this type of Megger works. It's largely, you crank it. And you generate the electricity yourself. So there we go. The Biddle. So since we have the Simpson out here, I thought what we'd do is we'd look at the testing on this tool. This has different leads than what we've seen on the Klein. And same test you do on any of the Meggers. Short them out. This is kind of nice because you could use these to pull them apart. But we'll short these out. We'll put them off frame so that I can set them somewhere safe, that nobody's going to touch them. We're on 500 volt scale, 0 to 500 meg. And we're just going to tap this, and you see it goes to full scale, which is what you want. That's a short. And you want to make sure this is back down all the way. You can even turn this to off, and it has a voltage meter in it. There's your voltage meter, 0 to 5,000 volts. You want to make sure that's at 0 before you touch these leads. So now that they're open, we'll put them off frame here again, and we will test the tool same as we did before. And you can see the meter does, or the needle does not move at all. And when we go to the off, the circuit opened up very quickly. So when you're in coils and what have you, that coil will retain some of the power in the circuit. So when you step this up, we'll go to the 5,000 here quickly. Again, these are well separated, not going to touch anything. Go to the 0 to 500 meg here, run it a little bit. When we turn it off, you just see the needle bounce a little bit, and then it goes back down. So that's telling us that the voltage has collapsed from the circuit. That was the meter itself retaining some of the voltage. So got to watch that. We'll see on the Klein that also shows the voltage in the circuit simultaneously. You don't have to switch it to off. But that's a good feature. This actually will lock the button on so you can walk away. You don't have to hold the button in, but I don't use that function. I like the momentary just for the extra safety. So there we go, Simpson model 405. Okay, so here we are with the Klein Tools ET600. I'll just show the quick test on this tool so that we know we got everything working properly. Showed the test on the other two. We'll do this one. We'll just go to the 500 volt scale and we will clip these two leads together. Make sure they're safe. I'm going to put them off frame here so that they're not into anything. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run our test. You're going to see that that is a short and the voltage is very low for that reason. And you saw it drop off there very quickly. So now what we'll do is we'll open these up, put them off frame again, and we'll run our test again. So now you see we're developing 546 volts in the circuit, 4000 meg, and you can watch the voltage drop, and now it would be safe to touch the leads. So that's a good test of the tool. Again, you always want to make sure nothing's touching these leads anytime you're pushing these buttons or cranking the handle or anything like that. People can get hurt. Objects can get damaged, what have you, everything that goes along with that. So there we go. There's a little bit closer look at all these Megers. Each have their own flavor, each have their own attributes. This has a much more compact convenience factor. There's definitely a charm to the others, and they have their applications as well. We're not going to do a 5000 volt test with this like we could with the Simpson. And this doesn't really have the feedback that the Biddle has. The Biddle has a very unique feedback that when you use those a lot and you're doing basic testing, you can get a quick feel for what you're doing. If it's not super precise and accurate, you can get a good enough feel really quick and move through things nicely. Haven't been in this situation with this one yet, but there's definitely an application for a tool like the Biddle in today's world yet. So since we took a look at how these things work, I just want to reiterate that these are fairly dangerous tools. You do not want to be using these unless you have some background knowledge on how they work and what they do. You can damage equipment, you can hurt people. They can be very costly, make costly damage, but used properly, these tools can save you a lot of money and time. They're great for troubleshooting motors, conductors, anything like that. Most of the ones I have here are outdated. We also have the Biddle over here. For the most part, these are largely outdated. The Klein is fairly new. It has its application. I mean, if you're on a job site certifying conductors after you pull them in, none of these three are the kind that you want to use. You want to use something else. But as far as troubleshooting, all of these are, you know, the best of their era, I think. The Klein being the best for a price point in the era. It's not necessarily on par with these, the Simpson and the Biddle, a little bit higher end. This should be a fluke if we're talking apples and apples per era. But this is what we got, and it's working good. But this is the different meters that we have, and I thought I'd show the differences between them a little bit. You have to know your scales a little bit more with a meter like this. Select, you know, where you're going to be in that scale, always starting at the lowest, working your way up. So that's pretty much it. You know, this is a much more basic meter, as is this. This one you crank and either it works and you get your reading in here. I wish I could have got this a little bit better, but unfortunately it was jumping around on us. Okay, so there's some fun with the Megers. Hope you guys enjoyed it. look at the evolution of the industry through the tools themselves. They're all fairly comparable for their uses. Fun little video throw together. Got out the tools, checked them out, and hope you enjoyed the video. And thanks for watching. Catch you later.